Kellan Zane didn't expect his life to change the night he gave away his only warm jacket. He was standing outside the grocery store, the cold biting through his thin hoodie, watching his 6-year-old son, Noah, sip lukewarm hot chocolate from a paper cup. The kid had cheeks red from the wind, a knitted beanie too small for his head, and eyes that still sparkled like he believed everything would be okay. Kellan wasn't so sure. They just spent their last $20 on groceries that would have to stretch until next Thursday. Rent was already 3 days late. His construction job got cut back to part-time, and he'd been picking up whatever side gigs he could find, moving furniture, fixing fences, even hauling junk. But nothing stuck. "Daddy," Noah said, tugging on his arm, "that lady looks cold." Kellan turned. Across the parking lot, a woman stood shivering near the bus stop, hugging herself. She didn't have a coat, just a thin gray sweater and jeans soaked from the snow. Her hair, long and dark, was stuck to her face and her lips were blue. But what hit Kellan hardest were her eyes wide, scared, like she didn't belong here and didn't know where to go. Kellan looked down at his son, then back at the woman. "Stay here, bud." He walked over without thinking. "Hey," he said gently, "you okay?" She looked up, startled. "I missed the last bus. My phone died. I didn't think the snow would hit this fast." "Where's your coat?" "I left work early. Didn't bring one today. Thought it'd be fine." Kellan didn't hesitate. He pulled off his own coat, a battered black canvas jacket with a ripped pocket and a broken zipper, and wrapped it around her shoulders. She blinked fast. "No, can't take that. You're freezing." "You're worse, just take it." She looked down at the jacket, then up at him. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice cracking. Kellan nodded once and turned before she could say anything else. Noah was waiting by the cart, hugging his hot chocolate like it was a treasure. Kellan picked up the bag of groceries, and they started walking the 6 blocks home. He didn't look back. 3 days later, Kellan was elbow-deep in a busted sink at a stranger's house when his phone buzzed. He wiped his hands and checked the screen. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. That night, after putting Noah to bed, he listened to the message. "Hi, this is probably weird, but you gave me your jacket outside the grocery store. I didn't get your name, but I wanted to thank you. I found something in the pocket your son's drawing. It had a phone number on the back. I know this is random, but I'd really like to return it and maybe buy you a coffee. I owe you more than I can say." Kellan stared at the phone, heart thumping. He remembered the drawing Noah had made it at school. It was a picture of their apartment, with stick figure versions of the two of them and the words "me" and "dad" scrawled in red crayon. He must have stuck it in the jacket pocket without Kellan noticing. He hesitated, then called the number back. She answered on the first ring. "Hello." "Hi, this is Kellan, the jacket guy." A small laugh. "I was hoping you'd call." They met the next day at a small cafe near downtown. She was already there when he arrived, sitting by the window with 2 cups of coffee. She stood when she saw him. "I'm Penelope Pierce," she said, offering her hand. "Kellan Zane." She handed him the folded drawing. "I figured this was important." "It is," he said, carefully tucking it into his wallet. "Thank you." They sat. She looked different now, hair brushed, makeup light, wearing a sleek coat that looked expensive. But her eyes were the same, warm, honest, just a little guarded. "I wanted to say thank you," she said. "That night I was having a really bad day. You didn't know me, you didn't have anything to give, but you still gave me your coat." He shrugged. "You looked like you needed it." "I did." They talked for an hour. He told her about Noah, about working construction, about how hard things had been since his ex walked out 2 years ago. Penelope didn't pity him, she listened. She told him she worked in finance, that she just moved back after years in New York. She didn't say much else. When he got up to leave, she touched his arm. "Can I see you again?" Kellan blinked. "Why?" She smiled. "Because I want to." Over the next few weeks, Penelope kept showing up. She'd bring coffee to the job site, offer to babysit Noah so Kellan could take extra shifts. One Friday, she showed up at the apartment with 3 bags of groceries. Kellan stared. "Penny, can't let you do this." "You didn't ask me." He stood there, torn between pride and gratitude. "This isn't charity," she said softly. "This is me caring." He let her in. One night, after Noah fell asleep on the couch watching cartoons, Penelope and Kellan sat on the balcony with cheap wine and a blanket. "You've changed my life," he said suddenly. She looked at him. "No, Kellan, you changed mine." He turned to her. "That night, I wasn't thinking. I just saw someone who needed help. I didn't know you'd turn around and become the most important person in my life." Penny's eyes filled. "I didn't know a man could be like you." He reached for her hand. "I'm falling for you." Her breath caught. "I already did." She leaned in, and this time he didn't stop her. When he kissed her, it was slow, sure, and full of everything they hadn't said yet. And it felt like the start of something that could actually last. Kellan stepped off the rusted city bus, Noah's small hand curled tightly in his. Snow had stopped falling, but the sky hovered heavy and gray, threatening more. They walked the 3 blocks from the stop to a modest brick building with creaky stairs and a faulty front buzzer. The apartment was drafty, the heat inconsistent, and the water banged in the pipes when it turned on, but it was theirs. As he unlocked the door, he noticed a large envelope wedged between the screen and the frame. He hesitated before pulling it free. His name was written in tidy, unfamiliar script, no return address. Inside were 2 concert tickets and a handwritten note. "I heard you liked the Black Pines. Saturday night. I'll meet you there. Don't worry about Noah. Already asked your neighbor if she can watch him. She said yes. Let me do this." There was no signature, but he didn't need one. Kellan set the envelope on the counter, heart thudding. He hadn't mentioned his favorite band to her. She must have seen the battered CD case in his glove box the night she helped him fix the broken latch on his truck. He hadn't even realized she'd noticed. Noah tugged at his sleeve. "Can we have pancakes for dinner?" Kellan nodded absently. "Yeah, hey bud, let me just check the fridge." Saturday came faster than he expected. He didn't have much to wear, just a clean shirt and his last pair of decent jeans. He stood in the mirror fussing with his collar longer than he should have, then gave up and tousled his hair once with damp fingers. Mrs. Jermaine from next door arrived 5 minutes early, armed with a tote bag full of puzzles and a tin of oatmeal cookies. Noah launched into a monologue about dinosaurs before Kellan could even say thank you. "You go enjoy yourself, Mrs." Jermaine said without looking up from the puzzle pieces Noah dumped on the floor. "We'll be just fine." Kellan arrived at the venue 10 minutes early. It was a mid-sized theater, the kind with old velvet seats and a ceiling painted like the night sky. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, people moving to find their spots. He scanned the room, and then she was there. Penelope stood near the aisle, her coat slung over one arm, her dress simple but elegant. She looked at him like she'd been waiting all night. "I didn't know if you'd come," she said as he approached. "I didn't know people still wrote letters." Her lips parted in a soft laugh. "I didn't want to assume you'd want to see me again, but I hoped." They didn't talk much during the performance. The music filled every corner of the room, and at one point, she leaned against his shoulder, her fingers brushing his. He didn't pull away. Afterward, they walked together under the soft glow of street lamps. Her breath clouded in the air as she looked over at him. "I know I've been showing up a lot," she said, "and I don't want to cross a line, but I've been thinking about you, about Noah, about the way you look at the world like it owes you nothing, even though it's taken so much. He stopped walking. She turned to face him. I haven't had anyone say they've been thinking about us, he said. Not since before everything changed. Penelope's expression shifted. Before what? He hesitated, then answered. Noah's mom left when he was 4. She said she was going to visit her sister and just never came back. I used to think she'd show up one day, apologize, ask to hold him, but I stopped waiting. She stepped closer. You've been doing all of this on your own. I didn't have another choice. You're stronger than you realize, she murmured. He looked down at her, the space between them charged with something heavier than silence. You didn't have to come back after that night. I did, she said, because when someone shows you the kind of goodness that doesn't ask for anything in return, you don't walk away from that. You walk toward it. Before he could answer, a sleek black car pulled up beside the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the back door, clearly expecting her. Kellan's brow furrowed. You have a car service. Her mouth opened, then closed again. It's not what you think. I didn't think anything. I should have told you sooner, she said. I didn't want it to change things. He crossed his arms, suddenly cold again. Change what? My last name's not just Pierce. It's Penelope Langston Pierce. My family owns Horizon Equity. His breath caught. Horizon Equity was all over the news: investment portfolios, skyscrapers, luxury developments. One of the top firms in the country. You're a Langston. I walked away from that world years ago. I moved back to start over on my own terms. But yes, that night outside the grocery store, I just quit the firm. I was trying to figure out who I was without the money, the name, the pressure. He stared at her, the weight of it all settling like snow. You let me think we were the same, he said. I didn't lie, I just didn't lead with the truth. I can't compete with that. She stepped forward, fierce now. This isn't a competition. I didn't want you for what you had. I wanted you because when I was cold and scared, you didn't hesitate. You didn't care who I was, and I haven't felt seen like that in a long time. He looked away. I don't know what to do with this. Then let me show you. The driver cleared his throat politely, but Penelope didn't move. Come with me, she said. Not forever, just tonight. Let me take you somewhere, no strings, just trust. He didn't move for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. Just tonight. As the car pulled away from the curb, Kellan stared out the window, city lights blurring past. He didn't know where they were going. He didn't know what to expect. But for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid to find out. The car slowed as it turned into a gated drive flanked by tall, ivy-covered walls. Kellan leaned slightly forward, watching the thick iron gates swing open without a sound. The driveway curved through manicured hedges and towering trees, ending in front of a modern glass and stone estate that looked like it belonged in a magazine. He turned to Penelope, his voice low. This is your place. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped out of the car and waited for him on the wide stone steps. Once he joined her, she looked toward the house with a cautious expression. No, it's my parents. They're out of the country for the month. I've been staying here while my apartment's under renovation. Kellan glanced up at the massive, angular structure. Every window glowed with soft light, and through the glass, he could see sleek furniture and a fireplace flickering in the far room. You could have just said no strings and taken me to a coffee shop, he said. Penelope glanced at him, a small furrow forming between her brows. I didn't bring you here to impress you. I brought you here because I don't want to hide anything anymore. He followed her through the tall glass doors, stepping into a space that felt more like an art gallery than a home. The air smelled faintly of cedar and citrus. To the left, a sunken living room opened to a panoramic view of the city below. To the right, A staircase spiraled upward like something out of a film. Kellan stood still, taking it all in. So this is how the other half lives. I haven't lived like this in years, she said, but it's part of who I am, whether I like it or not. He turned toward her. I don't care about any of this. You know that, right? I've been afraid you would, she said softly. Not because I think you're shallow, but because I know what it feels like to be judged by what you don't have. He studied her face, the shadows from the fireplace dancing across her cheekbones. Why quit it? The firm, the money, you had everything people dream about. I had everything except peace, she said. My father wanted me to take over the company. He'd been grooming me for it since I was 15. But I hated it. The meetings, the pressure, the way people treated me like I was a brand instead of a person. Kellan moved toward the windows, resting a hand on the cool glass. So you walked away. I had to, she said. I spent the last 2 years taking consulting jobs under a different name, building something of my own. But when I saw you that night, giving away the only coat you had without thinking twice, I realized I'd been running from the wrong things. He turned back to face her. And what are you running toward now? She crossed the room slowly, stopping just a few feet from him. Something real, something that doesn't care if I show up with nothing but honesty. Kellan exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. It's a good thing I'm not easily intimidated. She smiled, so stay for a while. He hesitated. What about Noah? He's safe. You're allowed to do something for yourself for one night. Kellan gave a short nod. All right, but only if I get to make the next move. Penelope tilted her head. What kind of move? You'll find out, he said. They ended up in the kitchen, which looked more like a showroom than a place anyone actually cooked. But Penelope opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of wine and a container of fresh strawberries, and set them on the island. I've always wanted to try cooking in here, she said, rifling through drawers until she found a cutting board. Kellan raised an eyebrow. You cook? I'm decent. I make a killer lemon risotto. That sounds like something people say when they've been on too many yachts. She laughed, the sound rich and unguarded. I've never been on a yacht. He leaned back against the marble counter. That might be the most surprising thing you've told me all night. As she chopped, he watched her with a curiosity he hadn't let himself feel in years. She wasn't polished now. She was barefoot, sleeves rolled up, a smudge of flour on her cheek from where she'd tried to open a bag with too much enthusiasm. The kitchen filled with the smell of garlic and lemon zest, and for the first time in a long time, Kellan felt something he hadn't dared to name. Comfort. When they sat down to eat, he cleared his throat. You ever think about having kids? She blinked in surprise. That's not where I thought this conversation was going. It's not a trick question. I always assumed I would, she said after a moment, but I didn't want to raise them the way I was raised. There were rules for everything. Expectations, no room to just be. Kellan nodded slowly. Noah's got a lot of questions these days about why things are the way they are, why his mom left, why his shoes are tight but we can't get new ones right away. Penelope's expression softened. What do you tell him? I tell him the truth, that life isn't always fair, but it's still worth showing up for. She reached for his hand across the table. You're showing up for him every day. That means more than anything money can buy. He looked down at her fingers laced with his, then back up. You're not afraid of all the mess that comes with me. I'm afraid of living a life that looks perfect but feels hollow. They finished the meal in silence, the kind that doesn't press, doesn't demand. Later, they stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, city lights glittering below like scattered coins. I should go, Kellan said finally. Noah'll be up early. He gets confused if I'm not there when he wakes. Penelope walked him to the door, her voice quiet. Will you come back? He didn't answer right away. Then, yes, I think I will. She leaned in, kissed him gently, and stepped back. Drive safe, she said. As he walked down the steps and climbed into the waiting car, something shifted inside him. Not just the beginning of trust, but the weight of being seen and still chosen. And for the first time since everything fell apart, Kellan didn't feel like a man who'd lost it all. He felt like a man who might be about to gain something worth everything. Kellan stepped into his apartment just after midnight, the door clicking softly behind him. The living room was dim, lit only by the glow of the hallway light misses. Jermaine always left on for Noah. He moved quietly, pausing in the doorway to Noah's small bedroom. His son slept curled on his side, one arm wrapped tightly around a plush dinosaur. The blanket had slid halfway off the bed, and Kellan pulled it gently back up, brushing a hand across his son's tousled hair. When he turned, Jermaine was standing in the hallway, coat already on, purse in hand. He was an angel, she whispered. Didn't even ask to stay up late. Kellan smiled softly, nodding. Thanks again, you're a lifesaver. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking again, her voice low. You look different, happier. He didn't deny it. After she left, he stood in the quiet for a while, watching the snow fall outside the window. There was a strange tension in his chest, not fear, not uncertainty. Something else, something close to hope. The next morning, Noah was up early, bounding into the kitchen in a pair of mismatched socks and demanding pancakes. Kellan flipped the last one onto a plate when there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find Penelope standing there, holding a paper bag and a small cardboard box. She wore no makeup, her hair pulled into a messy braid, a long coat buttoned to her chin. I brought croissants, she said, and something else. Noah peeked around his father's leg. Hi, Penelope. Her face lit up. Hi, Noah, I brought you something too. She handed him the box, and he opened it carefully. Inside was a hand-painted wooden puzzle, each piece shaped like a different kind of dinosaur. I saw it at a shop downtown, she said. Thought you might like it. He was already on the floor, trying to fit the pieces together. Kellan turned to her. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. He stepped aside to let her in. She moved easily through the space now, setting the bag on the counter, pulling plates from the cupboard like she belonged there. And somehow, it didn't feel too fast. It felt inevitable. Later, after breakfast and a round of the new puzzle, she pulled Kellan aside. I want to show you something. He followed her outside, where a black SUV waited at the curb. She opened the back door and gestured for him to get in. Noah stayed behind with Mrs. Jermaine, who had offered to take him to the park. As they drove, Penelope sat with her hands folded in her lap, eyes trained on the horizon. You know, I said, I'd been working on something of my own. Yeah. Well, I've been building a startup. It's a financial literacy platform specifically geared toward families who have fallen through the cracks. Single parents, people trying to get back on their feet. I've been testing it for over a year. Kellan raised a brow, and I want you to join me, not as a charity case, not because you helped me, because you understand people I don't. You've lived the things I'm trying to help fix. He stared at her. What would I even do? You'd be the community lead. Outreach, testing, feedback, you'd help shape the way we talk to people. You'd get paid a real salary, benefits, everything. He was quiet for a long moment. You really think I could do that? I know you can. They pulled up in front of a building tucked between two high-rise offices. It wasn't flashy, just a clean, modern space with wide windows and a simple logo on the door. Ember. Inside, the space buzzed with quiet energy. A few people worked at long wooden desks, laptops open, headphones on. Penelope led him to a small conference room where a whiteboard listed timelines and goals. On the table was a folder. She handed it to him. Inside were documents, a formal job offer, salary details, onboarding plans. "This is real," he said, almost to himself. "It is." He looked up at her. "Why me?" "Because you saw me when I felt invisible," she said simply. "And I've seen the way you fight for your son, the way you show up even when it's hard. That's not something you can fake. It's something people need to see." Kellan sat down slowly, hands still on the folder. "I'm not used to being offered things." "You're not being offered a handout," she said. "You're being offered a place. A future, one you've more than earned." He looked up at her again. "If I say yes, what happens next?" She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that asked for anything in return. It was steady, hopeful. "Then you and Noah start a new chapter. And maybe, if you want, I'll be part of it." He stood and crossed the room to her. "I want that." Her breath caught, and he reached up to touch her face, drawing her in. The kiss was different this time, not cautious, not tentative. It was full of promise, of something real and rooted and lasting. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "You changed everything for me." He shook his head. "You just reminded me it was okay to believe again." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting light across the city. And for the first time in a long time, Kellan Zane didn't feel like he was surviving. He felt like he was beginning. The first time Kellan walked through the front doors of Ember as an official employee, he wore a navy button-down Penelope had picked out for him and shoes he'd polished until they shone like new. Noah had insisted on helping him get ready, brushing lint off his shoulders, and declaring him cooler than Batman. Kellan hadn't known what to say to that, so he just hugged him tight and promised to pick him up early that day. The office buzzed with energy, but this time he wasn't a visitor, he belonged. Penelope greeted him with a quiet nod and a soft touch on his arm as they passed in the hallway, but she kept her distance otherwise, letting him find his footing without hovering. By the end of the week, Kellan had already sat in on 3 strategy sessions, offered ideas that turned into real tasks, and visited 2 community centers to start laying groundwork for Ember's outreach. The work was invigorating, focused, and for the first time in years, he didn't wake up dreading the day. He was still learning how to carry success without flinching. One evening, as he and Penelope walked out of the building together, she glanced over at him. "You're different," she said. He kept walking, jacket slung over his shoulder. "Is that a good thing?" "It's everything." They didn't go to her parents' house that night. Instead, Penelope followed Kellan back to his apartment, where Noah had built a pillow fort in the living room and insisted they both crawl in. They lay on their backs, staring up at the blanket ceiling while Noah made up stories about treasure maps and invisible dragons. After he fell asleep between them, Penelope whispered, "I like how it feels here." Kellan turned his head toward her, cramped. "No, close." The next day, Kellan took her to the school where he volunteered once a month. It was a run-down building with peeling paint and a playground that needed repairs, but the kids were loud and bright-eyed, and the principal greeted him like an old friend. Penelope watched him crouch next to a boy struggling with math problems, gently guiding him through each step without judgment. She stayed quiet until they walked out into the sunlight. "I've never seen you like that," she said. "Like what?" "Effortless." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for her hand and laced their fingers together. A week later, Penelope invited Kellan and Noah to her apartment. It was still being furnished, but the space had character: vaulted ceilings, exposed brick, and a wraparound balcony that overlooked the skyline. She'd added color with throw pillows and art prints, and Noah immediately claimed the corner of the living room with the biggest window as his base. That night, over takeout containers and laughter, Noah asked a question that made both of them freeze. "Are you gonna marry my dad?" Penelope looked at Kellan, who blinked once, then twice. "I like her," Noah added. "She makes good pancakes." Penelope leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "You think pancakes are the way to your dad's heart?" He nodded confidently. "And dinosaurs." Kellan cleared his throat. "We're not getting married tomorrow, buddy." "But maybe someday," Noah asked. Penelope didn't look away. "Maybe someday." That night, after Noah fell asleep on a pile of cushions and books, Kellan stood on the balcony with Penelope, the lights of the city flickering around them. "I was scared," he said. "Of what?" "That this was too good to be real, that it would disappear." She turned to him. "Then let's make it permanent." He stilled. "You're serious?" "I don't say things I don't mean." He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and opened it slowly. Inside was a ring, simple, classic, with a single round diamond. "I've been carrying this around for 3 days," he said, "waiting for the right time." Her eyes widened, then filled. "Penelope Langston Pierce," he said, voice steady. "Will you marry me?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes, yes, Kellan, of course I will." He slid the ring onto her finger, and she launched herself into his arms, kissing him with everything she had. They didn't go inside for a long time. When they finally did, it was with their fingers intertwined and hearts pounding in perfect rhythm. 3 months later, they were married on a rooftop garden surrounded by wildflowers and soft jazz music. It was a small ceremony friends from Ember, neighbors from the apartment, and a few kids from the school who insisted on throwing confetti at every opportunity. Noah walked her down the aisle, proudly holding her hand and announcing, "She's gonna be my mom now." Kellan met her at the altar, wearing a tailored charcoal suit and an expression so full of joy it stole her breath. As they exchanged vows under the open sky, Penelope whispered, "You gave me a new name." He replied, "You gave me a new life." They kissed to the sound of wind and clapping and laughter. Later that night, Penelope stood barefoot in their new home, a modest but sunlit townhouse with a backyard and a tree swing, and watched Kellan help Noah hang glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling of his new room. She turned when she felt a presence behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist and kissed the side of her neck. "I never thought I'd have this," he murmured. "You built it," she whispered. "You just needed someone to remind you you could." Outside, the stars emerged one by one, and inside, the lights glowed golden and warm. They danced in the living room that night, no music, no audience, just quiet steps and soft laughter. And when they finally fell asleep, limbs tangled and hearts full, it wasn't in fear of what might come next. It was in peace. Because love, when it's real, doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to last. Forever.